Okay, now that we got the chain off, I'm going to work on getting this sprocket and hub off. I had it off once before. What was I doing back then? I think I was getting at the brake caliper, which I'm going to do again, I think. Anyway, but that'll be a side thing. So as you can see, we've got this clip that fits around this nut. I generally safety wire mine just because there's not a lot else holding it on there. It's just an extra thing I like to have on there. It's not a big deal, but you can kind of see it's pretty spongy. Like, you don't really, it doesn't take much to get that guy off of there. Well, I say that. The idea is this piece of it, so this end here where my finger is, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it's looped. This other piece actually hooks and goes down and into a hole in the shaft. So that does kind of help keep it in place there. But you can just kind of wiggle that out and you can see, let's see, there you go. And then old wire pieces come off. But anyway, like I said, I like to safety wire it just to ensure that that thing stays on there, because of course you don't want the nut coming off ever. But of course for those OCD types that torque it down, it should not ever come off. But we'll address that when I reinstall it. I do have the manual and the torque figures. So for that, now we got to break this guy off. An interesting note, if you're doing this, is I think this is a 41 millimeter nut on here. The other side looks very similar to this, but it's bigger, and it is a 46 millimeter. So if you ever want your wheel off, you need a 46, and if you want this hub and sprocket off on this side, you need a 41, and you can find those pretty much anywhere, but they are big and they are kind of specialized. So this is what I've got here. Looks sort of like a impact size material as well, but I've got a 46 and a 41. Yeah, so 41. So we'll try to break this guy off lefty loosey. I'll try not to bang the camera around, and and being big, my 1/2 inch won't fit on this, so this is a 3/4. So let me go grab an adapter for that, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got this ginormous adapter, 3/4 inch to 1/2 inch. Got my breaker bar. Since my rear brake does work pretty good, I'm going to try just giving it a quick stab with the rear brake on. So let's see if we can get this kind of lined up here. Alright, so I just wanted to get in a different position. See if I can really get a good grasp on this. And voila. So there we go. Well, I don't think there was any good possibility of that just falling off while I was riding, so we'll just keep doing what we're doing. Make sure you keep everything and know where it goes, and then this sprocket should just slide straight off. There we go. And that's the sprocket and the hub and the shaft. It's kind of dirty. We're going to clean all this up. When I get everything going back together too, I've got the tool to adjust the chain, moving this sort of oblong oval cog around, which moves the wheel essentially front and back and tightens the chain or loosens it. So next we'll get this guy apart and put the new sprocket on. So very exciting. Alright, as you can see, we've got sprocket hub off. So now we need to remove, well, the sprocket from the hub, and we'll attach it to the new one here in a moment. So what we need is a 12 hex for the rear. Really, that's more just to hold it in place, and then the front is a 15 millimeter, and I need a 1/2 inch for that I didn't have, but I broke all these loose. So let's see, I think I can just get this off without having to worry about this other guy. So we'll pull these off, set them to the side, and somewhere along the way we're going to clean this up as well before we put it back together. Again, this is about 20,000 miles, I think. I don't know. Can we see this sprocket any closer? You can see the teeth are starting to get sharp on here, so wearing down in here is a little uneven, and it's not quite what we want. I'll show you what the new one looks like closer up when we get it out. Yeah. We'll go ahead and do that then. So we got this guy apart. Like I said, I'll do a cutscene, clean this up, and come back for the new one here in a moment. These, as you can see, are just little rubber bushings that fit in there. Just pop right out. I'll transfer over to the new. Technically, it's not the new sprocket. It's not even the new hub. It's an intermediary piece that fits on the hub and allows you to change out sprockets with looks like a 5-hole. So So you can put on your favorite color, whatever. But that's the deal behind this whole setup, is not having to rely on the Ducati sprocket, which I think you can only get from dealers or, you know, online Ducati parts places, which isn't too bad. But it seemed like when I looked these up, they were several $100s from the dealer just for the sprocket itself. And it's pretty heavy. Not that that matters too much, long life. But I think these Quick-Change Sprocket kits probably even allow you to go down a size. Like if you wanted something lighter, if you had something more of a performance bike than what I've got, the Hyper. You know, one of the super bikes or smaller super sport bikes. You could run a little bit lighter setup on it, lose a little weight, or you could just stop eating Taco Bell for a month. Probably make up for it. Okay, I'm going to clean this up, and we'll be back here in a moment. Okay, so we got this guy cleaned up a little bit. Got rid of the other sprocket, and this is the new guy. So you can see very shiny, black, super light even. It is held on to, like I said, this intermediate hub in here, which takes the place of the sprockets, the old sprocket itself being that piece. So really all one has to do is drop these guys in here and place the hub on. Now, one thing that was curious to me, and I didn't spend an enormous amount of time, but I couldn't find anything certain, and if you guys know this or where the information is, let me know, which way this would really go. Now, what I mean by that is I saw somebody working on my exact bike, and when they got to this, they started here, i.e. with all of the nuts, if you will, facing this direction. But between the camera switching over to them installing it, they had actually turned all of these around like so, which had the hub on this side and the nuts here. So I can see in one way this looks very nice and very clean, and I think with the single-sided swing arm there's plenty of room to do that. I don't feel like there's an issue with it mechanically. Maybe it's a look thing, I don't know, maybe it's the way it's supposed to be, but I would say 95% of the other pictures and videos I could find had them all going out this way. Like so. Which this is the inside and this is facing out, obviously, because of the hub faces out. But all of the nuts facing out. So to me, practically this makes a little more sense. Maybe that's why most of them had it this way. Because practically speaking, while this guy is on the bike, you've got your chain on and you're ready for a new sprocket, you'll never have to take these off again, these silver stock nuts, but you'll be able to access the sprocket nuts for just the sprocket. and you could break them free and loosen them up, you know, while it's on the bike. And then I think you're still going to have to pull this hub off to swap out a sprocket. I think. Anyway, it's an interesting design. I'm just sort of thinking about it right now as I'm putting this back together. But yeah, if you guys have any information on that, feel free to leave it for me, and I'll try to absorb it best I can. So for now, we're going to go this way, because regardless, if I ever have to put another sprocket on, this whole thing's probably coming off anyway, and it'll probably be new sprockets and new chain altogether again by the time I get around to doing it. So anyway, it's just a curious thing. I think too much. So we're going to put these guys in, put our hub back on. I'm going to put the nuts back on. I won't bore you with that, it's pretty easy. There's probably a torque figure for them. I'll look that up, and I'll probably just put it down in the notes on the video description, and we'll get this we'll probably grease this up a little bit. And I think I wanted to clean the hub off good on the bike, and we'll lubricate that up to spec as well, according to the manual. And then we'll get this guy back on, and that'll at least get us a rear sprocket so we can start the chain next. Well, I say that, I'm gonna scratch that, no chain yet, because I still need a stand to get the front up so I can undo the bolts that hold the swing, not the swing arm, but the kickstand and the center stand, so I can move a piece of the frame out of the way to get the stock sprocket off. But anyway, we covered that before, so we'll get this on right now. Probably the next thing I'm going to do, hopefully my new tire comes in today or soon, and we'll pull the rear wheel off, and I'll show you guys that. It's super simple, single-sided swing arm. That is the beauty of it. There's some oddity engineering on Ducatis, but that's a beautiful thing. All right, hang tight here. All right, so here we go. Got the new sprocket onto the hub all cleaned up, put back together, torque these bolts. Something of note, if you don't have a manual, where this hub fits in. Let me pull this apart real quick just to show you. Back here where these spacers fit in, the manual says to grease around there, and the manual also says that these should be tightened down to 48 Newton meters. So I've already taken care of all that, put the grease on. As you can see, this pops back in to the sprocket back onto the spline, and voila. So that's it. Looks pretty sharp. I like it. And then we'll get the chain and new front sprocket going pretty soon here, hopefully. Yeah, so one thing I wanted to mention while I was in here is this sort of oval piece here that moves the chain, or essentially the wheel, back and forth, but is your chain tightening area. So we've got this spanner. You can buy these just about anywhere. You don't need one exact. Most of them will come close. It just needs to be shaped like this with a catch at the end so you can fit it in. And as you can see, it doesn't fit exact everywhere on this particular cog, but that's not a big deal because you just need it to be able to grip onto there and then pull it one way or the other, depending on whether you need to loosen or tighten the chain. So we'll probably end up doing that once we get the new chain on, because the old chain was, as I've said, 20,000 miles and stretched way beyond its life probably. So I just was going to show you this. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty easy. If you've got the sprocket on and you need to tighten your chain, probably use a socket, a deep socket, maybe an extension. You can get back in here on these two bolts. They are 14 millimeter, which it's easy to get to with everything clear here. So we would just loosen these guys up. I don't remember the torque amount on them at the moment, but I will look it up when we get back to tightening everything up. So, but you want to make sure you loosen these guys first, otherwise this won't turn. These hold it in place once you get it to the correct tension. These don't have to be terribly loose, but you can see I can move them around pretty easily there. If I can get in a position to move this, I can just show you that from here, obviously with the sprocket, you have a little less to work with. You might want to wrap this maybe with a rag or something so you don't scratch up things. But just watch your knuckles as well once you get in here. But once you've got that loosened, you can turn that, and you can see, maybe you can see, as I turn this, the wheel moves around essentially back and forth. So I will probably, no, I was going to say I was going to look up to see about where it needed to be to put a new chain on. But I imagine as I put the new chain on, I may have to shorten this, essentially the wheelbase, just a little, based on how stretched the old chain was. But that's the guy. It's, I think I got maybe this, and I'll look it up, Amazon for probably not even $10, probably less than that. But I'll look it up to make sure. I'll leave all this information in the description as well. So there you go. And we will get the rest of this done here pretty quick. Okay, thanks.